What's going on? Raven Ritual 666 back from the dead with another Diablo 4 build guide. Welcome to my Season 7 Blizzard Arclash Hybrid, which can solo all T4 content with Sorcerer. This is a build that I'm bringing back from Season 4, and why would we run a hybrid with Blizzard and Arclash? Well, let me take you through that. So, Blizzard and Arclash both can scale really well together due to some of the Paragon board changes that we now have this season, especially with Searing Heat and Icefall. Previously they only scaled to their elemental damage type, but now they apply damage to all skills, which means we can get damage buffs to both Blizzard and both Arclash and kind of utilize that in a build which gives us a lot of value. You can see here in the clips behind, it's super fast for speed farming. There's a lot of pros and cons to it. If you like this build, please check it out in the description. All my builds are over on Mobalytics. I'm very proud to be a Mobalytics content creator for Sorcerer, and please subscribe to the channel. It helps me to keep bringing up these unique builds and fun ways to play Diablo now and into the future. And stay tuned, I have a few more that are coming through this season. So, pros and cons. Okay. The pros to this build are, initially, while you are leveling, Blizzard is very expensive to set up. It uses a lot of mana. And you can solve that problem for pure Blizzard later in the game, which is probably stronger. However, while you are leveling, going from level 20, once you've got your Glacial aspect and your Tundra, this will carry you through to T4. This is going to cap at about, pit 85, maybe 87, if you have like really high quality gear. But one of the pros of this build is you don't need great quality gear. It is cheap to set up. It is easy to use. And here you see me clear a pit 80 with like barely min-maxed gear. Some of the other things is it's just fun to play. If you're sick of leveling with firewalls and Hydra, you don't like being a fire turret with Incinerate, well, this is a fun and aggressive playstyle. If you like moving, attacking, well, it really, really helps. Some of the cons is boss farming in a party. It's not the greatest because it's not quick for boss farming, especially when you got necromancers just bonking everything, and same as barbs. And you do lose a little bit of damage from Glacial being at a hybrid. However, having a look at this build, it's super fun to play. Kind of the playstyle goes into it that you cast a few blizzards and you pop your ultimate for unstable currents, and then you start casting Arclash. And so you're kind of like Blizzard, 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 Arclash, Arclash, Arclash. And you rotate your defensive skills around that. You've got a lot of movement speed, you've got a good amount of area of effect damage, but also single target, because once you stack up those blizzards, it's really nice. And Unstable Currents gives us other buffs from our lightning skills. It gives us the attack speed, which is what a lot of this build revolves around. But also, we've got flat crit damage, which is scaling Blizzard and Arclash at the same time. So the build synergizes really well. It's very fun to play. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's take a little bit of a look at our gear and look at what we're using, why we're using it, and also what you can set up while you're leveling. So there is something I want to highlight before looking at the gear, which is our stats, which is our resistance and our armor. As you can see, my armor's at 525. It's absolute garbage, and that's because we're running the Shroud as a chest piece. I'll talk through some alternatives of what you want to use while leveling, but also resistance. We're at 57%. There's not too much more we can get out of our Paragon. So what you do want to use is your potions and your incense. In Season 7, we get so many materials, it is very easy to have infinite amount of potions and infinite amount of incense, even while leveling. Use them while leveling. It's cheap. It's great to use. I mainly run attack speed potion. It's quite nice to have. You can run the overpower and vulnerable damage. That's also awesome. If you're not quite at 100% crit chance, I do recommend using your Elixir of Precision. The 35% crit damage is also very, very nice. So depending on your circumstance, attack speed or precision for the extra crit damage. Otherwise, you can even run max life if you find you're a little squishy. But we have so much max life, and we're going to get so much more in the next 20 to 30 Paragon points that you probably don't need to run that potion. So, starting with our spices, you want to run Soothing Spice with our first incense, because that gives us increase of resistance. Then you want to run Song of the Mountains, plus 300 armor, That's going to get us to our cap. And the intelligence, because int equals damage, it also equals a little bit of resistance because we are sorcerer. And now you can see we're at 69%. Ooh, the naughty number. Ha ha ha. With a little bit more ints that we'll pick up later in our Paragon board. That'll get us to 72% and to cap. You can see our attack speed's at 55%, which is kind of nice. And our crit damage is absolutely huge. We're in a really good spot at 2,000% crit damage. Wonderful. And our crit chance is at 100%. So that is very important before we look at our gear. Starting with the helmet, the Air of Perdition is the best in slot. We get that 60% extra damage. It's awesome to have. But the crit chance gets us to the cap, and that's why I love it so much. You probably don't need to triple masterwork crit chance. You probably want to hit the third one on movement speed. Just gives you a bit more quality of life. If you don't have the Air of Perdition, it is okay. Over on Mobilytics, we do have some options. Let me quickly show you. Looking here at my guides, you will find the leveling guide of everything without any uniques and what is best in slot. The unique to mid-game, don't forget to come across here and check. There are some skill adjustments that we change between leveling to mid-game and to the pure end-game. But this is the T4 solo all content that I'm showing you through my current gear. Godslayer Crown is best in slot. So I got a pretty awesome one early on. Cooldown reduction's probably a priority for that mid-game push. But all the stats are very, very nice to have. And if you get a good aspect, 60% damage is cool to have. Shroud of False Death is best in slot. But moving towards T4, I don't recommend this initially. Not if you don't have all your occult gems. If you have 3 occult gems, perfect. You're fine to run Shroud. Otherwise, you're going to struggle with your resistance. For my first push in a T4, I just ran Tyraels. I barely even masterworked it right. I've got a better one with DR. DR's probably the best passive that you can get as a GA and that you would want to masterwork. So it's very nice to have, like with your resistance. It gets you to cap very fast. It makes you survivable in a T4. But even prior to that, I just ran this one. I didn't even masterwork it at all. I just put total armor, lucky hit chance to slow, and I had max life, armor, and int, and that got me the cap even without any mythics. So you can still use an ancestral. It's perfectly fine. But for the T4 to solo everything, you want Shroud. The amount of damage it does, the additional resistance is just huge. So for our gloves, we put on Frozen Tundra. You need this for any Blizzard build. It is so important because it allows you to ice spikes to have an increased explosion radius, and that is a very important point of our damage. It is critting 100% of the time because of our glacial aspect on our amulet. For anyone that doesn't know, Blizzard doesn't do damage itself. So when you look at our skill tree, we have no points into Blizzard, just one to pick it up, and it's the glacial aspect that creates the ice spikes, and it's the ice spikes that do the damage. You just want to go int, attack speed, and crit damage, lucky hit chance to freeze, and triple masterwork, the tempered version of crit damage, as that scales higher than if you get crit damage as a GA. I've got vulnerable damage. It's also very nice to have, but I would probably prefer crit damage if I was really min-maxing this with a GA on it. For our pants, ideally you want max life, resist all elements. I did put on rather than armor. It just helps us get to that resistance cap, especially with Perdition. I did run armor initially, but resist all elements is just wonderful to have. I could probably drop the max life and put intelligence. Intelligence on a GA would give me more damage and also get me to that resistance cap. In the perfect world, you want a GA on Arc Lash, but plus to basic skills is also pretty perfect, and that is what we want to hit with our masterworking. We just chuck on total armor, gets us to the armor cap, lucky hit chance to freeze is awesome. For our boots, we go int, maximum life, and movement speed. In the perfect world, you want to hit the intelligence and triple masterwork that. It's going to be more damage. It's going to get the resistance cap. But we run Orange Herald. Orange Herald reduces our cooldown of unstable currents. Like, we can have unstable currents up almost permanently. There are a few seconds or a little bit of time where we don't. And that increases our attack speed again. It means we get a lot of value out of our skills, and it actually increases our speed of our blizzards, which means we get faster damage per second with our blizzard because of unstable currents. Looking at our weapon, we run a dagger is okay, but we are close all of the time. You're probably better off with a sword, but you want int, max life crit damage, you want a temper crit damage, and you need chance for ice spikes to deal double damage. That is quite crucial for the build. To masterwork perfectly, to take this to the 85, I need a triple crit my masterworking, chance for ice spikes to deal double damage. That is very nice to have. And we run Moonrise, again, more attack speed. We actually get a little bit of damage from Arc Lash, which is very wonderful to have. For our focus, I don't even have a good one. Lucky hit, chance to restore primary resource is nice to have. You don't actually need it. It just means you can class Blizzard a little bit more often. Max life is good. Cooldown reduction is good. Crit chance is good. If you don't have 100% crit chance, you can pick up crit chance here on your focus. It'll kind of fill in the void or fill in the gap. I actually had a GA crit chance, and I rolled that off for primary resource. That's because I didn't have the Perdition, and that got me to crit cap before I could put on the Era Perdition. Now the pizza, la resistance, the damage, the most important aspect for any Blizzard build is Glacial. You want this on the amulet because you get the 50% damage buff. When you run pure Blizzard, you need it on a two-handed staff because it does more damage. But for the passives that we want, in a perfect world, Intelligence, you'll see that all in the Mobilix guide below. You would want Permafrost because Permafrost is just OP now. It does damage multiplicatively to all skills. And probably Glass Cannon. If you don't have Glass Cannon, you can also run some other options, which will take you through a little bit when we get into the skill tree. Ring of Starless, amazing. Best in slot. It gives us so much extra damage, and we're constantly casting Blizzard, and that costs 40 mana. So when we spend, a certain amount of mana, we get this buff up all the time, and it's almost permanently up. It's very, very nice to have, and it gives us crit chance and attack speed. You want to triple crit the attack speed if you are masterworking this. And we do run Blue Rose. Now, if we are not using Ring of Starless while you're leveling, Tau Rasher is amazing. It's still going to give you 75% extra damage. It's very nice to have. It was kind of hard to put Ring of Starless in and take out Tau Rasher. I tested both ways, but I feel like Ring of Starless does a better job because of how mana intensive Blizzard is. And when we're single targeting, we can cast Blizzard so many times, we can stack it up so much, and eventually their health bar just starts to shred. So we need Ring of Starless for single target, but Tau Rasher technically is better for just like all-round speed farming, but Ring of Starless goes in, and we do run Blue Rose because we get chance for our ice spikes to explode twice. And that is what you want to hit on your masterwork as a priority, as well as ice spike damage, and you want to triple masterwork chance for ice spikes to explode twice. If you can get that to 100%, that is going to be a very big damage per second increase. I will showcase our witch powers. We run the Doom Orb. It's awesome to have. It's an Eldritch power. It gives us some nice damage. Some of the bigger hits we hit is when Doom Orb actually procs, which is kind of nice. You won't see a massive damage from Blizzard or Arc Lash, but what it is, it's just an anomaly of just pure damage, and from two sources. There's so many Blizzards going. There's so much Arc Lash, or as I call it, swing in the purse, like Arc Lash. And that means we got additional sources of damage from unstable currents, from shocking impact, and we just do so many thousands of little numbers per second, and when we have our Doom Orb in there, it's nice to see a little bit of a hit once in a while. Aura of Siphoning, it's how we get a bit of passive health regen. That's wonderful to have. And then Aura Specialization to increase the size, and it gives us crit damage to enemies within our aura, which is awesome. It's a crit build. Arc Lash, Blizzard, scaling off a crit. We really like to have that because that gives us a big damage buff overall. We use Breath of the Coven, extra attack speed. More attack speed means more damage per second. We do run Shaken Soul. This is how we apply Vulnerable. We don't need to use Lucky Hit chance to apply Vulnerable on our build like I was testing in Season 6. So this gives us vulnerable almost permanently because we're applying our aura in a wide circle. Doom Orbs now applying aura, and finally we use Purging Touch because it's Eldritch. That gives us 48% increased damage to all enemies with it. So that is all. Okay, we'll go through some of the skill tree, what we use from our mercenaries, and touch on the Paragon board briefly, but the rest of the build's down in the description. Again, please, if you've learnt anything today, if you like the build, or if you're going to give it a go, give a comment in the description. It really helps me. And again, subscribe to the channel. It's free. It comes with a money back guarantee. But let's take a look at what's next. Taking a look at mobilitics, we use the same skill setup for our leveling, our mid-game unique push, and into our solo T4, everything endgame. We do run Flame Shield. It's an O-snap button. It saves us from being crowd controlled. It means you don't need to dodge any of those like floor mechanics. It's nice to have. Unstable Currents is very important. We have it almost on perma cooldown. It gives us attack speed. It allows our skills to get lightning spears, which is very nice for additional damage, for additional vulnerable, additional stuns. It helps us with our crowd control, particularly on single target. Very awesome to have. Ice Armor we still run. It does give us an additional amount of damage based on our skills. If you are leveling, there are some changes over here between leveling, unique, and our end game to the capstone that we use that will take you through on the skill points. We still run Arclash. Obviously, it's a Blizzard Arclash build. Kind of be stupid if I didn't use Arclash in my own build name. Teleport for the movement, also for the damage reduction. Wonderful to have. And a sorcerer not using teleport is kind of a sad sorcerer. You want that movement speed. You want that freedom. You want that fast pace, especially for leveling. And Blizzard. We need it. Now, the difference between leveling and unique mid-game is we run Fireball and Teleport. Yep. Teleport enchant for the extra teleport for our movement, and Fireball because while you're leveling, once you kill an enemy, they explode in a Fireball, you get that additional damage. It's very nice. Fireball does not scale well as an enchantment into the endgame into pit like 85. It just doesn't do enough damage anymore. So we kind of trade that out, and we make some changes to our runes, and we go Ice Blades, because Ice Blades give us the cooldown reduction for our defensive skills. Since we're not running Town Rashes, we don't have that additional cooldown reduction, which means Ice Blades with our skills means our defensive skills are of cooldown much more, which is awesome. And Frost Nova. Now we use Frost Nova. It only seems to work well when we have unstable currents and Ice Blades, because we have enough of our conjurations up to get that chance to release a Frost Nova, and enemies hit by a Frost Nova take an additional amount of damage. So yeah, make sure you check where you're at. If you're brand new on leveling, check this guide. If you don't have your mythics, run the unique mid game. It'll still carry you to T4, and then Blizzard Arclash for like that pure end game. But let's look at the end game, because this is the T4 solid everything, and we'll go through the skill tree and I'll talk that through in a bit more detail. So you go 5 in Arclash, we get additional points with our Pantaloons, because our Pantaloons give us additional skills to Arclash, or basic skills. We do want the mana, but more so the next swipe to do more damage. We do want the damage from it. We put a couple points in a Potent Warding, just for a little bit more resistance. It's going to get us through here. While leveling, we do take 1 point in a Fireball, but we don't need that for now. 1 point into Flame Shield. I really wanted to use Shimmering Flame Shield, but it's so bugged this season. It doesn't heal you for 50% of your missing life. It heals you for 50% of your base life, which is nothing. Nothing at all. I'm like Ned Flanders. Feel like I'm wearing nothing at all. Nothing at all. So yeah, it's super trash this season. Used to be okay. 5 in a telly, all the way through to Shimmering. You want the DR. 1 to reduce our cooldowns. 3 Glass Cannon. Glass Cannon's OP. It's a massive amount of damage. We want that. While leveling in our Ice Armor, you probably want Shimmering, just because you can stay in your defense all the time, and with our Aspect, we can get the bonus damage to vulnerable while we are in Shimmering Ice Armor, and that's nice to have. But for the end game, we want the 15% increased damage to frozen enemies, and we get that a lot of the time. Blizzard's chilling, freezing, we've got lucky hit chance to freeze, and we do use Frost Nova as an enchant. Now, Frost Nova is kind of good again this season, because once they're hit by Frost Nova, they take 15% more damage from you for 4 seconds. Awesome against elites, but against bosses, it's 8 seconds. So that is awesome. Awesome to have. That's why we use that as an enchantment. We do pick up just the 1 point for lucky hit chance. We come over here. I kind of swap between the invoked ice blades for the attack speed. It's kind of good, but I think we have enough attack speed with our vampire powers with Breath of the Coven, so we don't really need that. And the cooldown reduction is what is lacking. So it feels really good on the end game to have roaring ice blades, because when it's up, which we cast a lot of mana as another enchant, we get that a lot of the time. And again, it procs our Frost Nova, which gives us more damage. It just synergizes so well. You take the usuals, align the elements, and protection. We need our barrier. This is our defense. 3 points of mana shield. We do cast a lot of mana with Blizzard. We get a lot of DR. Just the second point into Enhanced Lightning Spear. We probably actually don't need that anymore, because now we're at 100% crit chance, so we could probably reallocate that. If you're not at crit, res cap, we could probably just chuck that back in a potent warding, but why do we run Familiar? Well, we're not using Familiar. We're not using it as an enchantment. We are not using it on our hotbar. So what is the point of Familiar? Familiar is awesome because of Unstable Currents. Unstable Currents gives you a free cast of any shock skill that you have, which means we get free shock familiars. And the only reason we take these 3 points is when a familiar is active, you gain 10% multiplicative damage to skills that deal that damage type. Now, Arc Lash is not our strongest skill, but we get 10% damage to all of our lightning damage, which means when Unstable Currents is up, it's casting Ball Lightning, it's casting Charge Bolts, it's casting Lightning Spears, it's casting Chain Lightning, and so we just get a little bit more damage with our lightning skills because of these 3 points. Blizzard, you don't need 5 points. I said it before, it is pointless. Blizzard does not do damage. It is Glacial and Frozen Tundra that allows Blizzard to do damage. So you just pick up 1 point here. You want the duration, because the more duration, the more damage. Nice to have. Inner Flames, it's a very nice change this season, because you get 18% increased damage while healthy. When you're in a barrier with a lot of DR, you're healthy a lot of the time. It's a very good passive to have on your amulet. So this is a priority passive to have on your amulet. Glass Cannon is also a priority passive to have on your amulet. And coming to the next tree, Permafrost. You get 6% damage per skill, so 18% flat, while a frost skill's on your action bar. And obviously we've got a frost skill. A lot of builds will use this season. Wonderful to have. On my current setup for that, like, easy 80 clear, I'm running, I think it was Icy Touch for the multiplicative damage to vulnerable, but in a perfect world, I want Permafrost and Glass Cannon. That'll be the most damage, or Permafrost, as well as Inner Flames. Icy Touch is good. We get more damage to vulnerable, and again, more damage to chilled enemies. Blizzard is constantly chilling enemies, so we get almost a flat 9% damage and 18% more to frozen. You want elemental synergies for the extra buff, the cooldown reduction from evocation. 5 points into Unstable Currents. We need to get that cooldown as low as possible. We want to try to be in Unstable Currents as much as we can. Just 1 point to the attack speed. It's 25% additive, but it feels good. You actually kind of notice it. Supreme doesn't matter. We're not using Crackling Energy. And for Enlightenment. If you're leveling and playing this build on hardcore, like, I didn't die at all until, probably my first few days in the T4, pushing T4 bosses. You can actually run Via's Mastery if you really want the DR. If you want to survive on hardcore, to make sure of it, you don't care about damage, you can swap Enlightenment out. But Enlightenment is going to be your better passive. Looking at our Paragon, there are a couple reasons why we want to run this build this season. It's Searing Heat and Icefall. So you kind of pick up the first board. We grabbed Tactician. It got a nice buff. It got like 5% extra damage after casting our defensive skills. So we kind of like that. Little defense, a little bit of offense. We pick up Destruction. We want the crit damage. You pick up all these points here. It's in the Mobiletics build guide, which we're looking at now. You come up here, you at least grab Unleash. Mana regen, nice to have. A little bit of 8% multiplicative damage. You want to grab Frigid Fate because we get multiplicative damage, which is awesome to have, to Vulnerable, which scales perfectly with our crit and everything else we're doing. Then you come across, we pick up Elementalist, so dealing fire, cold, and lightning damage. We get more DPS. Also helps with our buffs for Enlightenment. And then it is Icefall. Icefall is so good. So your Frost skills deal 25% increased damage. Nice. But the bonus is doubled. And now, finally, used to be doubled to all your other Frost skills or something in the past. But now it's doubled and applied to all of your damage against frozen enemies and bosses. We're constantly freezing enemies. We have so much frozen, so much crowd control that this applies to Arclash and all of our lightning abilities. This makes Blizzard and Arclash work this season. And then across we come into Searing Heat. We do run Exploit for the extra vulnerable damage. I tested this by also running the increased intelligence skill, which it didn't work as well. Yes, it helped us with elites, but just trash bombs were too slow to kill. So Exploit is the best here. After quite a bit of testing, I traded this in, traded it out, but I finally settled on Exploit being best. And then Searing Heat. This used to only apply to Pyromancy skills, but now Pyromancy skills get crit chance. We don't need crit chance, but we get 10% damage to crit strike bonus up to 60%. Now, we're at that cap. We've got heaps of crit. We've got a bonus 60% critical strike damage, which we need to scale both. So that is just so cool to have. We'll touch base over on our mercenaries because we do get more crit damage and we get a nice little bit of survivability there, which is awesome to have. So for our main, we run Subo because Subo's OP. It's nice to have. You can see everything on the map. We come left side. Bit of movement speed. It's additive. It's okay. But this is kind of cool. 25% increase crit damage to enemies that are hit by his cover fire. So more crit, more scaling, more damage from both our skills. Awesome to have. And then we run Rahir with Bastion. It's just nice if you are gonna die, if you somehow get crowd control and you can't break it. Little bubble pops up. You can survive. He takes 90% of the damage, and we use that when we're hit with a crowd control impairing effect. The rest of this build, whether you're leveling, your mid game, your end game, is all here. I've got a ton of detail. Our runes change depending on where we are. For leveling, we do use the meteorites. They kind of do a bit of damage early. They scale terribly into the end game. For the end game, we don't use teleport enchantment. I know. Why? Because the jar rune actually gives us unstoppable. Teleport as an enchantment doesn't give you unstoppable. Now the weird thing about jar rune, it doesn't break crowd control. If you're sitting there frozen or stunned and you try to teleport enchant with the jar rune, it doesn't break that. But because we Arclash so often, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, jar, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, telly, we're almost constantly unstoppable, so we can't be crowd controlled anymore. It helps a lot with our pits. And that frees up space for us to use Frost Nova, which means we can run Ice Blades, so we don't need Tele Enchant there anymore. And there's nothing else that's really going to make our damage feel too much better. Maybe +1 to all skills, that's okay. Maybe Vex to pull in enemies, that's okay, but having the extra damage from Frost Nova here instead of Tele Enchant and putting Jar there is nice. And we use Seer, so it's up as often as possible. We run the new rune Nagu and Ohm. We still want the Barbarian Warcry, 15% more damage. Awesome to have, but yeah, everything's here. For our Occult Gems, we run Toadling's Wish for our growth and decay witch powers, a little bit more potency. We have Eldritch Witch Powers, which we're mainly running, 25% potency, and more damage to our Doom Orb, because that's 40% more damage, and that kind of hits like a truck. yeah, bit about the game loop, everything about how it works. Overall, I just wanted to say thanks so much, guys. I appreciate you all being here. Please check out my mobility guide in the description. Give me some comments, give me some feedback down below. Anything else you'd like to see from me. Again, if you've made it this far in the video, please subscribe to the channel. It's completely free. I stream on Twitch on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Come hang out with me. I'm always willing to help the community. I will see you all on the next one. Hope you enjoyed it.